John gave me a card from a divorce lawyer 1 month after not seeing him. He didn't ask if I was okay or how I felt. He's divorcing me, and since I don't work, he'll pay $1,000 a month as alimony. John chuckled and said, "Take care," while Emily stood beside him with a smug expression. I agreed to the divorce casually, surprising John, but he and Emily shared a smile. John isn't a big thinker, which makes my revenge plan easier. After the divorce papers got approved, I decided to start my revenge plan on both of them. I'm Sarah Wolf, a 47-year-old illustrator and children's book author who loves drawing. John and Emily are my childhood friends, and John is my husband. Everything started when John asked me out as I was about to go to a different college after high school. I was surprised because I thought he liked Emily, but since I secretly liked John, I couldn't say no to him. After thinking about it and talking to Emily, I said yes to John's proposal. Emily had some issues with her behavior since our teen years, but she was still a dear friend to both John and me. Emily had a habit of taking other people's boyfriends and then breaking up with them once they got too obsessed with her, causing problems repeatedly. Her parents were worried, so John and I spent time with her to look out for her. John and I got married at the age of 25. 4 years later, Emily introduced her fiancé, George, into our lives. He worked for a top-tier company. Nice to meet you, Sarah and John. I've heard so much about you. Looking forward to our future together. George was very polite, and we all became friends immediately. We would hang out during holidays and vacations, going on trips or long train rides to enjoy some drinks. However, things started going wrong after Emily became pregnant 2 years into her marriage. John and I had many siblings, so we weren't worried about having kids. We decided not to have children. We liked kids but didn't want the responsibility. Plus, we enjoyed our freedom to travel and have drinks. We thought families with children were heartwarming, but it was never more or less than that. When Emily told us about her pregnancy, John's behavior changed. He quit smoking because Emily didn't like the smell and even offered to take her to doctor's appointments, using his vacation days. I warned him, George might feel bad if you're always with Emily. But John argued, you have work. She's our childhood friend, and she needs help. You're heartless. I said, I've been buying things and helping as much as I can, but going with her to the doctor is too much. John frowned and glared at me, saying, why? Just because Emily wants it? She's anxious about the checkup, and I can't let her go alone if she's anxious. I replied, that's more reason for George to go with her, right? If you go every time, it's like you're the baby's father. John, feeling jealous, said, you're not going to get pregnant anyway, so what's the problem? He didn't take my worries seriously and instead got angry, saying I was being annoying. We rarely fought during our marriage, but things changed when Emily got pregnant. Our arguments increased, and it didn't stop even after Emily gave birth. John started spending even more time with Emily and their child, Emma. But when Emma turned 6, something happened. It was about the people attending Emma's graduation ceremonies. The day before the graduation, John suddenly started going through the closet. John, what are you doing? You have a meeting tomorrow. John's workplace had a casual dress code, but there was a rule to wear a suit during client meetings, so he always kept a few suits ready. But they were all thrown on the bed. Now, just trying to decide what to wear for the graduation ceremony. What? You're seriously thinking of attending the graduation? Yeah, George can't make it, Emily asked me. Wait, that's absurd. No matter how you look at it, I unintentionally raised my voice in denial. Immediately, John's face turned sour. I knew he sometimes picked up Emma from kindergarten, and I had done it too when asked, but it didn't make sense for a childhood friend who wasn't even Emma's biological parent to go to a graduation ceremony. What? You still doubt me and Emily? I'm disappointed that you can't even help out. That's not the point. Anyway, I'm attending the graduation tomorrow, so iron a shirt properly. John said that and abruptly ended the conversation, leaving me behind and going to the bedroom. I had no choice but to call Emily. Hello, Emily, about tomorrow. Sorry about tomorrow. I'm borrowing John, but won't George be upset about the graduation attendance, Sarah? What are you talking about? Obviously, I haven't told George that the graduation is tomorrow. I'll tell him after the ceremony. I was surprised to find out that George didn't know about the graduation plan. When I asked more questions, it turned out that Emily hadn't told George about any of the kindergarten events, and John had been acting like Emma's dad at the kindergarten, which felt really selfish. Wait a minute, Emily. Isn't that really unfair? It's not right to George, just because he's a childhood friend, right? What's the problem, Sarah? You're scary. Well, see you tomorrow. Wait, Emily. I was really mad at Emily, who hung up the phone without listening. Anyway, I ended up ironing a shirt, getting a tie ready, and the next morning, I saw John off to Emma's graduation. After that, John and Emily started going out more, from once a month to once a week, and then 3 times a week. Eventually, even George started to get suspicious. One day, while John and Emily were out, he came to our house alone. I'm sorry for coming so late. There's something bothering me. Is it about them? Yes, I want you to look at this. George showed me the GPS history he put in Emily's car. It showed that she was staying at a hotel 3 times a week, every time she was out with John. Just by looking at George's face, I understood what that meant. What do you want to do, George? I want to get back at those two. Me too. I can't forgive them for betraying us after all this time. We secretly planned our revenge. First, I worked on making more money because I had been saving by doing housework and taking care of Emma, and my income had gone down a lot. George started working from home, and when Emily and John went out, he brought Emma to my house, and we took care of her together. Emily and John didn't know we were aware of their relationship, so we gathered solid proof. Once we had enough evidence and were ready for revenge, we found out a surprising truth about Emma. George and I struggled with the decision, but we agreed not to hurt young Emma. So we decided to wait until she was an adult to get our revenge, even though enduring it for 10 years was tough. Then, I got seriously ill. I needed long-term hospital care, and at best, I wouldn't be discharged for at least 2 years. Even though I could work from the hospital, I would have to reduce my workload. After telling George, I talked to John about it. But John's reaction was the same as when we had small talk. I'll visit you once in a while, he said. I felt like John didn't care about me anymore since he didn't ask about my condition or the name of the disease. In reality, he only visited once a month or every 2 months. After Emma's 15th birthday, she started acting differently, even though she used to visit me almost every day right after I got hospitalized. She became distant after her 15th birthday, but George and I couldn't figure out why, and we were confused. When we asked Emma, she just said, "Don't worry about it." However, we found out the reason from John, who rarely came around. Hey, it's been a while. Yeah, it has. John, who had completely changed his appearance, walked in without even knocking. After not seeing him for a month, John gave me a divorce lawyer's business card without asking, "Are you okay?" or "How are you feeling?" Divorcing a wife who doesn't work. Pay me $1,000 a month as alimony. That's the deal, so take care, John said, grinning. Beside him, Emily wrapped her arms around John's with a similar expression. Fine, let's divorce then. I agreed casually, surprising John for a moment. But he quickly exchanged smiles with Emily. It was good that John didn't think too deeply. That's why my plan worked well. After getting a notification that the divorce was finalized from John, I decided to start my revenge plan against the two of them. I will make them cry as a celebration of my recovery. I quickly took action. First, I asked George to move hospitals. Then I told my lawyer to mediate between the two parties from now on. George also started acting at the same time. He moved near my new hospital with Emma, and he started to visit me often. Emma still looked sad, but I was happy that she came to see me every day. Most of my stuff was already in the hospital room, so I told John to get rid of the rest. I didn't want to bring anything they might have touched into my new life. After the hospital transfer and George and Emma moving, John called me. I had only left my seat for a few minutes, but my phone showed 30 missed calls. I answered the phone feeling annoyed. What? Hey, what's going on? I could hear a troubled real estate agent behind John's panicked voice. I also heard Emily yelling, which made me feel sick. What do you mean? What's going on? It's obviously about the house. Why do we have to move out? John shouted at me as if it wasn't his fault. I replied coolly, obviously because that's my house, huh? John seemed to have forgotten. But the truth was the house we lived in was a room I rented as a workspace when I started freelancing. At that time, I didn't have enough money to keep 2 houses, and John didn't have enough to live alone, so he moved in with me. So John never paid rent or utility bills for that room. Although I got some money from him for living expenses, it wasn't enough to keep the place. Unfortunately, that room was already canceled. It was far from the hospital I transferred to, so I canceled it the day after submitting the divorce papers. I didn't tell him because the real estate agent who knew the situation said they would contact him. George and Emma suddenly disappeared, and our house was sold. What should we do about our new house? I don't know. Maybe stay in a business hotel for now. As I turned on the speaker and started working, John yelled in frustration, "Don't mess with me." However, he seemed to remember something and started speaking more calmly. Well, whatever. When will you transfer the money? We're running low on cash. What are you talking about? Huh, don't play around. I told you to pay $1,000, didn't I? Oh, I don't recall agreeing to that. My casual response made John scream on the other end of the phone. It turned out he thought he could get money from me and had been spending it recklessly. Even if he had $1,000 left, how did he plan to get by for the rest of the month? Hey, don't just stay silent. Say something. There's really nothing to talk about. My comeback left John momentarily stunned, but he soon started yelling again, growing more annoyed. I spoke to John in a cheerful tone. Anyway, we're basically strangers now, so please don't contact me anymore. You'll hear from my lawyer. Huh, lawyer? Hey, wait a minute. I hung up without listening to John's response. He tried calling back several times, but I ignored it, and eventually the calls stopped. However, angry that I didn't answer, John started ignoring calls from my lawyer. He certainly had a childish side, but I never imagined he'd be the kind of person who didn't mind causing trouble for others. I sighed deeply because of John's selfishness. A few months later, after a short break from the hospital, I went to John's parents' house. In front of me were John and Emily, both looking small and scared. Telling my parents is not fair. Oh, I just told them that we got divorced. John glared at me when I said that, but he backed off under his father's stern look. I had a good relationship with my in-laws, even visiting and eating with them when John wasn't around. Even though they liked me, I thought it was wrong not to share the details of our divorce, so I went to see them. Is it true that you're marrying Emily? Yes, it's true. True. Emily, Emma, and I are going to start over as a family. What are you talking about? Your only family is Sarah. She's not my family anymore. John's words made his father frown like saying, "Give me a break." John shook his head a few times, then gave me a paper. It was a bill from a luxury hotel nearby. What's this? It's the bill from the hotel we stayed at. John, acting like it was obvious, pointed at the bill on the table, then suddenly collapsed. Oh, what the heck, Mom, I didn't raise you to be like this. My mother-in-law, gasping for breath, was met with a look of disbelief from John. Next to him, Emily wore the same expression. Why are you so angry? It's just that the family is changing because I'm getting married. Plus, you'll have a grandchild, a blood-related one at that. Aren't you happy? My mother-in-law, looking as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing, glanced at Emily. Then she looked at me. Both my in-laws understood that I didn't want children and still treated me like their own daughter. They treated Emily, my childhood friend, in a similar way, but there was always a boundary between a daughter-in-law and a friend. I remembered Emily often complaining about that, so I was sure my mother-in-law wouldn't be happy about this situation. And Emily should have known it too. Do you spoil Emma, right? It'll be your grandchild, so you'll be happy, right? It's because she's a child I've known since she was little. Oh, but half of her blood is from John, right? Even after all this, Emily, showing no sign of remorse and acting like she couldn't understand the problem, gave me goosebumps. At that moment, someone who had been silent until now spoke up. Enough already. It's disgusting, huh? Emma, who had been playing with her smartphone in the corner of the room, spoke to Emily without looking up. The room fell into stunned silence. My dad is the only one I consider my father, whether we're related by blood or not. He's the only one. But you know, John has always been the one to attend your school events. I've heard everything from Dad. How he was always informed of the event dates after they were over. How eventually even the events themselves were kept from him. But Dad always said I was his daughter, so I am his daughter, and I will never be yours. Emma stared at Emily as she said this, then, sitting beside me, she switched to a more concerned tone. You know, when I found out about this, I thought you would hate me. But Dad said that wasn't the case, so I came here today. Emma, I love you so much. You were so kind to visit me every day while I was in the hospital. I was really happy, Sarah. Emma, maybe feeling relieved, teared up and hugged me tightly. Even though she might be a child from John and Emily's affair, I've taken care of her for 15 years. There's no way I don't have affection for her. Speaking of which, Emily, didn't you wonder why I wasn't surprised when I found out Emma is John's daughter? Ah! Emily looked startled before she could speak. A new person entered the room. We knew from the start, 10 years ago, actually, George. Emily started to panic when George suddenly appeared. Understandably so, as she had recently demanded a divorce on her own, citing irreconcilable differences. I was shocked when you mentioned divorce. Oh, and unfortunately, you're not divorced yet. The divorce papers are still here. Didn't you notice? What I realized. It wasn't in Emily and John's nature to confirm things, but I couldn't help but be stunned that Emily, despite the 100-day waiting period for women to remarry, hadn't noticed for months. So Emily is still my wife, and Emma is still my daughter. Well, there won't be a wife, though. Wait, what do you mean a 15-year-old can choose their parent? That's not true. Emma wants to be with Mom, right? Emily said that and looked at Emma. Emma frowned at Emily and held my hand. Emily was speechless and glared at me. Then John suddenly burst into laughter. So that's what it is. You two are together, huh? But too bad. Isn't it impossible to live on George's salary alone? Can you stop making weird assumptions? Also, it seems George earns double the amount you think Emily knows about, huh? It's probably a bluff, lol. Besides, it's impossible for you to work while dealing with your illness. You'll just die miserably somewhere. This time, I laughed at John's big misunderstanding. John, seeing me suddenly start laughing, was getting frustrated. You didn't know about my income, did you? Huh? It's probably just a bit more than a part-time job. No, it's different. My annual income is $500,000. John's eyes and mouth were wide open in shock. Emily was also stunned. In fact, over the past 10 years, I had become a popular children's book author, and my income had skyrocketed from essays, interviews, and the like. Moreover, a film adaptation is planned soon, so my income is skyrocketing. Liar. Oh, do you want to see this? I said that and showed Emily my bank account screen. It clearly showed a large amount of money being deposited every month. Emily was at a loss for words when she saw it. Sarah, let's all make up, huh? What are you saying? Emily was furious at John's words. Blinded by the money, I watched them blankly and then opened my mouth. Well, if you want to get married, feel free. Oh, and I'll definitely take the compensation for damages, Sarah. Wait, Sarah. Ignoring John's words, I took Emma's hand, and after saying goodbye to my in-laws, I left their house. John originally worked at my father-in-law's company, but it was revealed that he was lying about going out for sales, and he was fired. my father-in-law planned to forcibly put him on a friend's fishing boat and work him to the bone. Working on a fishing boat was tough for indoor-loving John, and he contacted me several times, but each time I notified my father-in-law, and eventually the calls stopped. Emily lost the right to take care of Emma and got divorced from George. She didn't care much about John, who couldn't afford many things and didn't try to win her back. She was no longer a part of her family and lived alone in a not-so-nice apartment. She hadn't worked since she got married, and because she always had others do things for her, she couldn't do much on her own. It was tough for her to find a full-time job, so she worked several part-time jobs to pay for her living and child support, just managing to get by. After starting high school, Emma worked really hard every day to study abroad and attend a prestigious university overseas. She has always been diligent, and her dream is to translate my picture books and share them with kids all around the world, which makes me happy. As for me, my picture books are doing well, and I'm getting more offers for turning them into animated shows and selling merchandise. My illness is getting better, and even though I'm still in the hospital, the doctor said I might be able to leave next year. And one more thing, George and Emma come to see me every day. Recently, George expressed his feelings for me, thinking about remarrying. I haven't given an answer yet, but I find myself liking him more, especially since he wants to live together when I leave the hospital. While figuring out what to say, I continue working on my picture books every day, hoping for a happy future for all of us. I create new stories again today.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.